All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this CNIC event. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Andrew Teal. I am the Executive Director, as it now appears on screen, of this Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council. Mostly everyone probably online is aware of the CNIC and our activities, but we are an organization that was formed in 2018 with the simple mandate to educate and advocate the public and government about isotopes. So since our inception, we had about 16 members at our humble beginnings. We have now grown to over 75 members, encompassing coast to coast, a wide portion of the isotopes ecosystem, from irradiation, processing, logistics, right through to the sale and management of isotopes as well. So this is our final CNIC event of the year, which I know will make everyone sad, but we have a full calendar planned for 2023. So if this is your first event, please stay on the lookout for more. For next year, we have an exciting calendar. It's been a great year for the CNIC. We've continued to grow. We continue to see some progress with government when it comes to medical isotope support from both a public and bureaucratic perspective. But that's not the focus of today's event. Today's event is specifically about the commercialization challenge that many isotope companies face, and the success of one isotope company who has started to overcome this commercialization challenges and hopes to help others overcome it as well with AtomV. So in the coming years, Canada's isotope industry will face a gap between the number of GMP manufacturers available at the commercial level and at the rate at which pharmaceutical drugs are approved. As global and domestic demands for radiopharmaceuticals grow, Canada's isotope industry is focused on ensuring sufficient, scalable, and reliable supply of medical isotopes. So this event, we will introduce AtomV with a presentation from Dr. Bruno Paquin to begin. And then this will be followed by a panel discussion with three of our experts from the isotope community about some of the challenges that these companies face, how they engage with investors, as well as delivering a message to government of support that is necessary to continue to help this key industry grow. So I'm going to introduce Bruno, but I wanted to encourage the folks at home who are watching this presentation to please ask questions. There'll be an opportunity for me to ask some questions to Bruno following his presentation. And then when our panel discussion starts, there will also be an opportunity for folks to ask questions at that point. So please don't hesitate to put them in the section that you see on your screen. We want to have obviously two-way engagement. We'd love to be able to do these things in person, and we're certainly getting close to be able to do that again. But thankfully, we still have this virtual world to allow us to deliver these events on a more regular basis. So I'm going to begin by introducing Dr. Bruno Paquin. So thank you for joining us, Bruno. Bruno is the CEO of AtomV Global Radiopharmaceuticals. Bruno was pivotal in the success and launch of AtomV, securing at least $40 million in Series A funding for AtomV. Prior to AtomV, Bruno joined the CPDC, which is the Center for Probe Diverse Development and Commercialization, excuse me, that was a mouthful, as the CEO in November of 2020. Under his leadership, CPDC has achieved record revenues and gained several new clients and in the presence of the radiopharmaceutical industry. Previously to CPDC, Bruno was VP of Business Development at Immunity, where he was instrumental in growing the company from 6 to 25 employees. Before Immunity, Bruno was the Executive Director and Head of Business Development at Genzion Biosciences and received his PhD in biochemistry from the University of Montreal. So thank you, Bruno, for joining us. Congratulations again on the launch of AtomV. Look forward to your presentation. And again, as people have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Andrew, for the introduction. So I'm very happy to be here today and share the story of AtomV Global Radiopharma with you. So just to set the stage, as Andrew mentioned, AtomV is a spin-off of the CPDC, the Center for Probe Development and Commercialization. And it's basically what AtomV is a CDMO, which is a contract development manufacturing organization for the GMP manufacturing and global distribution of radiotherapeutics. So just before we get into the essence of the presentation, just a quick reminder about radiopharmaceuticals. These are pharmaceuticals that carry a radioactive payload. They are referred to as targeted radiotherapy or sometimes radioligand therapies, and they basically consist of a targeting moiety upon which a radioisotope is chelated through a linker. And depending on the type of isotopes, then it can either be used for therapeutics or diagnostics, though in some cases, one isotope can do both, since some of the therapeutic isotopes can also be used for imaging. So in terms of its origin, I did mention the spin-off from CPDC, but just to take a step back and show what CPDC was and still is actually. So CPDC is a McMaster University Caesar that was founded in 2008. Over the year, we collected over close to $50 million of grant funding. We grew the company to over 110 employees. Until recently, CPDC was operating 2 locations, one in Hamilton, where we are currently located, and one in Toronto. Our facilities are currently GMP compliant, both with Health Canada and FDA. We have had several audits with both regulatory agencies. We did supply many different clinical trials globally. We ship our product toward different countries, up to 15. And over the years, including the FTG that we manufacture for quite a few years, we did impact the life of over 90,000 patients throughout. So one of the mandates of the CPDC is really to create companies to commercialize the assets that CPDC has developed. So it started with the creation of CAMPRO, which is a joint venture between the University Health Network and CPDC. And CAMPRO is focusing on cyclotron-based imaging agents. And then the R&D assets, as well as the R&D expertise, was spun out to create Fusion Pharmaceuticals. Along with 3 other partners, we did co-found Artemis, which is a solid target technology platform. And then the recent spin-off that, the subject of this discussion today, AtomV Global Radiopharma, as I mentioned, for the GMP manufacturing and global distribution of radiotherapeutics. So the company was officially launched as of August 1st. That was following the closing of our Series A financing. We raised at the time at least $40 million coming into AtomV. And we say at least because not our Series B, but our Series A2, which will be the second tranche of our financing, will include more than a total of 40 million, because we are set to build a new facility and equip the new facility with new instruments. So it will be more than 40 million, and that's how we structured the deal so far. And what did CPDC created and what was transferred to AtomV? Basically, over the years, CPDC created a business, a contract manufacturing business within the center. And over the years, we developed over 30 radiopharmaceutical development manufacturing projects. We did design and commission 5 radiopharmaceutical facilities, not including the current facility that we are constructing. We validated radiotherapies for the Canadian, US, and European markets, though we also ship some of our products to Asia, Australia, and recently even to South America. And as of today, we are supplying 13 drug products globally, up to 15 countries. And if I calculate the number of doses for radiotherapeutics, it's in the range of 1,400 doses that we have shipped around the world. So, and the other asset that we also transferred to AtomV, and maybe most importantly, is the know-how and the staff, right? So we did transfer over 100 employees from CPDC to AtomV, including myself as the CEO, but as well as all of the leadership team and all the staff involved in various aspects of manufacturing, whether it's production, QA, QC, regulatory, business development. Pretty much all of the employees were transferred to AtomV. And the reason is that over the recent years, contract manufacturing was more than 95% of what CPDC was doing. And in terms of services, so we basically help our sponsors to develop their product from early R&D or preclinical activities to the marketplace. And how it goes is that, prior to clinical support, what we do is we develop and validate the analytical methods and processes, and we can optimize the processes, we can work on the formulation and make it ready for administration into human for phase 1 and more clinical development. We also provide some pretty strong support with regulatory affairs, both for the Canadian and the US market, and we are expanding that expertise to Europe as well. We do provide regulatory support as a standalone service, though for most of the time, that service comes as a support to our manufacturing clients. And so, but the bulk of our activity is actually the GMP production, the GMP manufacturing, and the logistics that's come with it, because those radiotherapeutics, as you know, are pretty short-lived. So we have developed a pretty strong expertise in terms of logistics to get the drugs at the right place and at the right time. So this is what we have been doing at our current facility located within the McMaster University campus for investigational products. So what we want to do with AtomV is to also include the same type of services for commercial manufacturing or manufacturing of marketed products. So, and in addition to a GMP manufacturing of final drug product, we're also involved in the production of medical isotopes. It's a collaboration that we have with Isotopia Molecular Imaging for the production of non-carrier added lutetium-177. That we do one batch a week for in the range of 12 to 14 curie of lutetium. And this is mostly for the American market, although we are shipping some of that to Europe and recently to South America as well. So if you look at the revenue, so the CMO, the contract manufacturing business started at CPDC back in 2014 with a relatively modest revenue. But as you can see over the years, it was a very consistent and constant growth. And if you look at the last year, it was anywhere between 17 and 56% of growth year over year. And if I were to put the next fiscal year forecast revenues, it would be about the same as the current year, maybe even a bit below. And it's not because the market is drying or the industry is not there. There's plenty of opportunities. It's just that we have reached pretty much the full capacity of what the current facility can offer to us. So we won't be able to continue that growth. And that was one of the reasons why we went and created and spun out that unit into a for-profit company in order to get some external funding and for us to build more capacity, more flexibility, and more space to continue the growth of the company and start, as I said, the commercial manufacturing. So we have set our eyes on a location. It's still in Hamilton. As you can see from this map, it's right across the Hamilton Airport, which is a pretty major cargo hub that we plan to use for the delivery of our products. And we are still about 1 hour drive south to the US border and 1 hour drive north to the Pearson Airport, which give us access to plenty of international destinations as well. So, and this is what the facility, as of last week, was looking like. It's still a shell at this point. The shell is not yet completed. It should be completed very early in 2023. So the space will be 64,000 square feet, which is a drastic improvement over the 15,000 square feet currently available to us on campus. The facility will be compliant with the Health Canada, FDA, and EMA GMP guidelines. We do expect to start moving our programs about mid-2024, and the facility will be made for pretty much all isotopes that can be used in the radiotherapeutics, including iodine-131, which is a fairly difficult isotope to work with, but the more common isotope like actinium, lutetium, and any other isotope that may come handy for the production of radiotherapeutics. The facility will be purpose-built. It will include more 14 and maybe even more clean rooms for both clinical and commercial manufacturing. Each clean room will have 2 production lines, so which means that the capacity that we will have versus our current 5 clean rooms is tremendous. And if we go, and produce at peak, we should be able to generate more than 400 million revenues out of this facility. And in terms of timeline, I did mention the construction of the shell is almost done. We expect to start clean room construction in 2023, transfer the program in the, starting mid-2024. And we do expect to move all of our activities and staff by the end of 2025 or maybe Q1 of 2026. And this will be a great improvement, not only in terms of capacity, flexibility, and space, but currently on the campus, right, our 15,000 square feet are scattered toward 4 different buildings on the campus. So it will be great to have all activities, all staff, and everything we do under a single roof. And I can tell you that myself and pretty much all of the staff are looking forward to that. So if you take a small glimpse to the market on the left panel, this is a survey that we did last year. Maybe it needs to be updated, but in short, you can see there's a pretty healthy pipeline of radiotherapeutics globally. We surveyed 6 products in phase 3 last year. 3 of those were supplied by CPDC at the time, so which means that AtomV, through what inherited from CPDC, has a really good position for all phases of clinical development. And if you look at on the right end of the panel, the radiopharmaceutical manufacturing market from an analysis made by Roots Analysis, the paler green on top is for radiotherapeutics. Looking at 2022, with our current revenues, we are approximately at 4 to 5% of the market. And with the new facility, our goal is to get in the range of 20% of the market. Anywhere between 15 and 20% is where we would like to sit once we are producing out of the new facility. And this is, it's just to show that the multitudes of companies that are currently developing radiotherapeutics or radiopharmaceuticals in general. And you can see there's a lot of companies having very early assets at the preclinical stage. And as we go through the chain toward phase 3, there's less and less, but there's still quite a few companies that are close to be ready to commercialize their asset. And if you look on the market, it's pretty scarce at the moment. But the 2 most recent asset by Novartis, Lutathera for the neuroendocrine tumors and Pluvicto for prostate cancers, are doing quite well, both in terms of patient outcome, the treatment, and financially as well. So it's a very exciting time to be in the radiopharmaceutical industry, because it's really booming as we speak. And AtomV will be really strategically positioned to take advantage of that, of that growth into the industry. And this is the last slide of my presentation, just to mention that CPDC, in collaboration with Triumph and 4 other partners, are working in establishing what we call a CNIC, which is a Canadian Medical isotope ecosystem. And I think in Canada, we have really a chance to have a really strong ecosystem, whether we look at the R&D or the production of those isotope or the use of those isotope. I think we have major global players in all of these phases. And, the recent example, the spin-off of AtomV and the funding of AtomV out of CPDC, I think is just the one most recent example of how dynamic is this industry in Canada. So the expertise is there, the infrastructure is there. So I guess it's up to us to bring it to the next level. So we have definitely we have the capacity out there. So this concludes my presentation. So thank you so much for your attention. And Andrew, I'm giving the floor back to you.
Thanks, Bruno, and thank you for the presentation. Really, obviously, setting the stage for I think our panel discussion that will dig into some of the challenges that led to the creation of AtomV. I do have a couple of questions before from the audience, so I'm just going to read the first one here. How will AtomV scale up and have raw supply achieved?
Yeah. So let's take this in two two halves, because these are two different issues. In terms of scale up, we expect to get into our new facility, as I mentioned, around half of 2024. So we have a plan, hiring plan and staffing plan that will be starting right at the beginning of 2023 to get the staff in, get the staff trained, and start working on the tech transfer of all of our programs. And once the program at tech transfer, we basically not have quite double the staffing, but maybe 1.25 or 1.3 times, and that would be enough for us to start our scale up in terms of staffing. In terms of production, the highest scale that we have done so far for clinical manufacturing is 30 doses in a batch, which is already quite something, because currently all our processes are semi-automatic or semi-manual, if you prefer. So there will be some great advance to be made in terms of incorporating more automation, and we are working with some vendors to have that done at the new facility. And the second question, in terms of the supply chain, that is maybe one of the most limiting factor in our industry, is to make sure that we have all the isotopes we need to produce the drugs. And I think there's been great development. Lutetium, although today there's a bit of a shortage issue, but I do expect the two major players, Isotopia and ITM, to get there very soon and provide the quantity needed. And there's some other players coming in for the lutetium production, so I don't think this will be an issue. Actinium is a bit more of an issue, but again, there's a lot of effort in the field to produce actinium, so I do expect, let's say 2 years-ish, I think the supply chain for actinium will be improved. And the other isotopes, we'll see how they become available.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Bruno. Really appreciate your time, the presentation, and as well as the questions from the audience. So I'm going to begin to introduce our panel, who's really going to explore some of the challenges of this commercialization issue, talk about kind of where the market's at, and what kind of programs and funding is available to kind of help overcome these challenges, or conversely, kind of what programs and fundings are necessary to help overcome some of these challenges that we see. So I'm going to begin by introducing Gadir Shabasi, who is the Associate Director of Business Development at AtomV. Gadir leads a business development team that is focused on client acquisitions, partnerships, marketing, and communications. Gadir was in the same role previously with CPDC. Gadir has prior to CPDC, Gadir had gained experiences in commercialization of antibiotics and biologics at former CCAB, which was the Center for the Commercialization of Antibodies and Biologics, as well as cell and gene therapies at CCRM, which is the Center for Commercialization of Regenerative Medicine. Over 15 years of professional experiences in life sciences, with a focus on anti-cancer drugs, and holds her PhD in biochemistry from the University of Toronto. Secondly, I'm going to introduce Joseph Tam, who is Isotope Senior Program Manager, TS. Joseph is responsible for leading capital projects in isotope production and industrialization. He has 20 years of industrial custom automation and manufacturing experience in a broad range of relevant industries, including pharmaceutical and medical device commercialization and production. His teams and projects leverage best-in-class technologies at ATS Automation and Commercialization, which has offered to bring them to bear in the growing isotope market. Lastly, I'm going to welcome Marc Gregoire, who is Vice President of R&D and Nuclear Operations at ABK Biomedical. ABK is a pre-commercial company developing a Y90-based radioembolic product to treat liver cancer. Marc has oversight for production and development and GMP of final product. Before ABK, Marc spent 4 years developing a successful professional consulting practice, working with multinational corporations, governments, and healthcare institutions. Before that, he spent 20 years in Nordion as well, working on radiopharmaceutical products and manufacturing facilities, including Yttrium-90, Indium-111, parental solutions, Y90 implantable microspheres, Cobalt-60 external beam therapy machines, and product delivery systems. So thank you very much to the expert panel. Really pleased to have you all here today. So I'd really like to dig into this issue of commercialization a bit. Obviously, we had Bruno provide kind of an overview of AtomV and how they're filling the gap. But I wanted to kind of start with getting a sense of the challenge. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Gadir first. And please, other panelists, if you have anything to say, please just let me know. So in Canada's isotope ecosystem, how would you currently characterize the marketplace for isotopes? And what is some of those challenges that businesses face to bringing their product to commercial scale?
Thank you, Andrew. And it is a great question indeed in our industry. So as we all know, Canada is well known as a leader in the medical isotope field. It has a long-standing history of being one of the largest suppliers for two key medical isotopes. Just to give examples, Cobalt-60, just in Ontario alone, more than 40% of the global supply comes from Ontario reactors, Bruce Power and OPG being at the center of that, as well as Iodine-125, which we all know McMaster University has 50 to 60% share of that market alone, which is used in imaging agents as well as brachytherapy. So this is just a testament to really illustrate how our position is in this industry as leaders and at the forefront of continuing to be globally well known to supply these innovative isotopes and radiopharmaceuticals. Just to address your question, we all see that the demand is increasing because the number of radiotherapeutics, as you and of course, as Bruno alluded in his presentation, is increasing by day. And of course, because of that, it means that the demand for the isotopes that are needed to make these radiopharmaceuticals is also increasing. So Bruno already mentioned some of the isotopes that are currently being used in Pluvicto and Lutathera, which is lutetium-177, also actinium. We all understand the actinium-225 supply chain issue, but also the opportunities for more innovative isotopes is becoming on the rise. So we at AtomV are getting requests from potential clients and collaborators for examples like terbium-161 or astatine-211 are two isotopes that are becoming more requested, and we're seeing the need for more innovative radio isotopes to be invested in and produced, not just at the research level, but also to be ready for commercial supply. So the potential is huge. Canada, as we all know, has already a very solid infrastructure. The skill set exists, obviously. And what we're asking for is to leverage the info that we have and for investment into our skill set that we have built years of history into this field, so that we can continue to solidify our forefront position as leaders in this field. So I hope that addresses your question. It is really something that all of us in this industry are facing, and it is our duty as Canadians to continue to solidify our position in this field by really pushing our potential forward.
Thanks, Kadir. No, that's great. Joseph, I'm going to move along to you with a question. So Canada, as we've noted at the outset of this presentation, will likely experience a gap between the number of commercial level pharmaceutical manufacturers and the rate at which pharmaceutical drugs are approved. How can Canada play a role in kind of racing this gap, and what role do our companies have in stepping up to help reduce this opportunity, or what is needed to be done to perhaps limit this gap that we expect in the years to come?
Well, thanks, Andrew. That's a great question, and it's a great segue from what Kadir was talking about. There are really three areas that I think would that can really help address and close that gap. The first is already mentioned, which is the stimulation of competition and innovation in the industry, and seen some of that already. We know that currently there are multiple organizations pursuing actinium, and they're all pursuing them via different routes. And the challenge is really to get that innovation scaled up quickly. So going from an R&D mindset to a scaled manufacturing it's not something that's trivial. And Kadir had already mentioned that we do have a significant existing infrastructure, and what I would encourage this industry to do is to really leverage some of the best practices from adjacent industries that Canada already has. So, for example, when I speak about AS, we have automation, we have existing practices that are proven to work in the manufacturing industry that I could really be leveraged by the isotope industry to make it more resilient, more reliable, ultimately guaranteeing that the supply of these isotopes are consistent and can be depended upon. Some of the examples of that would be starting to take a look at digital batch record keeping and how that can be integrated with an ERP system. Using proper modular scalable designs to take processes from a R&D demonstrator all the way to full scale manufacturing and all the trimmings that come along with that. And there's a whole bunch of adjacent sort of considerations, one of which we're currently in discussions with and experiencing is there seems to be maybe a lack of emphasis on some of the waste that gets generated as a result of the production of some of these isotopes. And at an R&D scale, the waste may be trivial, but as you progress into a larger scale manufacturing scenario, I believe that there merits an additional emphasis on developing, managing some of the management of some of this waste. So a good example of that would be radon management. And one of the routes of actinium production, handling radium, and the persistent presence of radon becomes a challenge for any facility that's planning on using that route. And that's something that I believe we as a country, with the existing talent that we have, can address. And finally, more on a policy and licensing standpoint, I feel that there are challenges in the licensing area of getting manufacturing really scaled up quickly. And oftentimes, as we all know here, radiopharmaceuticals is an interesting cross-section between politics, public perception, and actually benefiting the patients. A lot of times the licensing process can be extended unnecessarily, possibly due to a convolution of the public perception of anything to do with radiation. And there seems to be a negative connotation to that. So perhaps that sort of a protracted process can be reduced simply through better education and better communication with the general public to let them know that the production of these isotopes ultimately benefits not only Canadians, but also people worldwide. So quickly, in summary, what do we need to do to close that gap? We need to improve competition, or at least stimulate more competition, be able to move quickly and effectively from an R&D mindset to a large-scale manufacturing, and finally, maybe address some of the educational and perceptions that the public has about isotope production. Back to you.
Oh, that's a great answer, and really appreciate the 3-point summary at the end there. I think that that answer really drove it home. I'm going to just give another plug to those who are watching to please feel free to submit your questions in the chat. Our panelists are eager to answer. But I'm going to turn to Mark for my third question. And this builds directly off of what Joseph was just talking about. Obviously, ABK, as you mentioned, as a startup. So what opportunities do you find in your position that are currently available to attract and engage investors, both in Canada and abroad? And do you find that they're adequate enough to support current commercialization endeavors?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I mean, we actually just announced yesterday that we just finished closing a Series C for $30 million US that will hopefully keep us on the rails for a little bit longer and get us through to a commercialization phase. I mean, I think the way I would answer this is, when you approach investors, I think us in the industry, we're entrenched in the nuclear. We understand all the ins and outs, limitations, the specific nuances of but generally, venture capitalists and other investors at large don't really understand the nuclear industry and the importance of logistics. And it's very, very easy to take that for granted. It was kind of what Joseph just said. I mean, I think it's all about education. So I think when you reach out to industry, venture capitalists, it's all about educating them and really bringing it down to the basics to really let them understand the opportunity, return on investments, perhaps the life cycle of a radiopharm project. I think we've had to go largely to the U.S. I think the Americans or the venture capitalists are a little bit more risk takers. In Canada, we tend to be a little bit more conservative. So I think trying to build cases for Canadian investment can be a little bit more challenging. Yeah, especially when you have the ebbs and flows of market conditions, where all of a sudden venture capital is less available. Timing can be everything. We're actually very fortunate that we were able to raise some funds. We've made some pretty good hit some pretty good milestones in our product development. But of course, those kinds of things also come into consideration. So I think for me, it's all about not underestimating the level of education you need to give to these potential investors and walking them through the basics, because we really do take it for granted. I think all the things that we know and learned the hard way through the years of experience we've had. So.
Excellent. Maybe I'll ask that question as well to Kadir, because obviously, as Bruno detailed for us, CPDC has been responsible for the spinoff of several companies who have gone through this process. And how do you find, having grown in the role at CPDC and now with AtomV, that interest in investment?
Thanks, Andrew. I was actually about to build on to what Mark said, and first, congratulations, Mark, on the success of your funding. But what Mark just said is basically replicating what our experience was in trying to raise funding for AtomV. Of course, this was under the leadership of Bruno, and he can tell you that we really faced a lot of challenges in going out to Canadian investors to convince them and to really tell the story of what AtomV can bring to the community, but of course global in the radiopharmaceutical industry. And it is a gap that we should be able to address in Canada, because at the end, we succeeded with Avigo Healthcare, which is a US-based investor company. And it's great because we obviously attracted foreign investment into Canada, but also knocking doors within Canada itself was something that we really struggled with. And it would, in my opinion, be more encouraging for small startups like ABK or like ourselves, where we are trying to build the story and really have a viable business model where we could leverage what we already built for us at CPDC, and then taking it forward to translate it to a commercial marketplace would be something that I think we have room to improve in Canada. To this day, we continue to get interest from foreign investors who call us up and clearly indicate an interest in AtomV and potentially becoming future investors. So it's great news for us. But I really think that, like Mark said, maybe it is more the conservative nature of Canadian investors versus US investors or others abroad who are more adverse to risks. So that's our personal experience, personal being AtomV. So I'm sure Bruno could tell you more stories about him facing this, in the last more than a year, I would say, because we really tried our best to knock on as many doors as possible within Canada before going elsewhere.
So on that note, we have a question from the audience. So you both mentioned the role of international investors, the U.S. investors, as well as Canada. Do you feel that the collaboration, let's say, between our federal governments is adequate when it comes to the medical isotope ecosystem? Where are some of those challenges found? Is there a strategic direction that's being provided through collaboration? I know as there's the Department of Energy, which is responsible for isotopes in the States, and there's a very clear top-down directional statement when it comes to how to commercialize isotopes. Is that present in Canada? And if not, is there some overlap with the states that we could see or should see? I'll go to Mark first with that one.
Sure. I mean, I think ABK was started out of Dalhousie in Halifax, and I would say overall, we were very well supported in Atlantic Canada by the ACOA, Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, where they gave us really good Series A seed money. We're very well supported by the local Innova Corporation community here. I think at some point you plant your seeds and you need to get into big dollars, and I think at some point you have to make a case for yourself that you can go out to private capital and grow on your own. I do think we got to be careful not to rely too much on federal support, but it's a balance. I personally feel like the federal government was very well supportive of ABK and certainly helped us get our feet off the ground. And now it's a matter of trying to go it on our own with support of an ever evolving ecosystem in Canada. So.
Kadir, any?
Yeah, no, well said by Mark. And if I could just add, I think we need more pan-Canadian sort of a strategic effort. And maybe this brings me towards the CNIC, which is what Bruno sort of concluded his presentation with. We already have the infrastructure, right? And to leverage this and to build really across Canadian ecosystem that will not only impact us economically, but also society, and also to expedite the translation of these radiopharmaceuticals to Canadian patients. I mean, let's not forget that these are our, end users, and this is what we're all striving towards: is to give them access to, innovative drugs that to fight, devastating diseases like cancer, not just in Canada but also globally. I think Andrew and we have been, in really forceful discussions with the federal government, with the Strategic Innovation Funding, or the SIF for short, to create the CNIC. And we're really hoping that this is sort of almost on getting ready to start becoming operational, hopefully very soon. But Andrew can tell you that we've had a number of discussions with many federal government agents that they understand the value of what we do, but to really translate that so it can really solidify investment that we need so that we can, invest into our, continue to invest into our infrastructure so that we can deliver and not only solidify our leadership position, but as Mark said earlier, is to really start to compete, right, with the rest of the globe, so that we can really, with the radiopharmaceutical drugs, become global leaders. That's my opinion. Andrew, I don't know if you have any more input.
Yeah, no,
because I know you face a lot of this yourself, CNIC.
yeah. So I think that's where I can kind of speak to the role of the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council. Really is as Mark spoke to his experience, and Gadir spoke to the experience of the SIF group. I think what currently lacks that we see in Canada is kind of that strategic direction on a national strategy for isotopes. And that's something that the CNIC has been advocating for since our inception in 2018. As I mentioned kind of in the prelude to this question, the Department of Energy has a very strict strict is the wrong word, but very organized strategy when it comes to their isotope program and how they do funding through the DOE for multiple production facilities and others. And it's just something that we currently don't see in Canada. Canada, as many people know, was a leader in the production of medical isotopes, thanks to our leadership with the National Research Reactor and our production of moly. But after the closure of that reactor, we really left the opportunity for private companies to step up, which they have, to fill that supply chain gap. But what's lacked is kind of that government direction in uniting all of these assets. And that's what really the SIF application that Gadir is speaking to is looking to do, is re-engage that ecosystem together. That's why the CNIC was created, to kind of bridge these gaps between these companies that have really stepped up in the absence of a national strategy, to hopefully have one developed that focuses on all of our assets, that critical infrastructure that Gadir mentioned that we already have, as well as the entire supply chain from, as I mentioned at the outset, processing to irradiation to logistics for medical isotopes. So I think there is certainly, to answer the question maybe directly that came from the audience, there is certainly opportunities for collaboration, but it's important that Canada also has a strategy to ensure that its own patients have access to the care that they need. Which maybe brings me to my next question, actually, and it's pretty relevant with kind of what's been in the news cycle lately. As some of you may have learned, there was some concern recently about a molybdenum-99 shortage caused due to an outage at one of the research reactors that provides this critical isotope for particular medical imaging a couple of weeks ago. And what that really showed, unfortunately, again, is the fragility of this supply chain, which is something that we can't really take for granted when we think that the result of a fragile supply chain with isotopes means that patients might go without the care that they need. So what type of role does Canadian companies play, or what role can Canadian companies play in helping to build this reliable, redundant supply? And maybe how can we overcome these supply shortages in the future with increased commercialization? And maybe I'll go to Joseph first.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I think I had already mentioned and this goes well with your point about stimulating more competition within the Canadian environment and leveraging some of the innovative and attributes of the Canadian manufacturing ecosystem. I think so. Good examples of this is the solid target developments of both Artemis and our company ComShare has their target solid target systems. And these are, I guess, good alternative methods. For example, the gallium generator, and this is the sort of innovation that will help provide resiliency. And I had already mentioned the actinium production through multiple parties with the different routes. So if we were to be able to get or to have the government and promote the radiopharmaceuticals and isotope production within the country, I think that will go a long ways towards providing resilience. And to the question that was posed by the audience online with regards to collaboration with the US, I know there's a statement about getting the, I guess, the raw materials for these productions. And I know for a fact that with the Department of Energy, especially for there is also a strong collaborative mindset there about being able to source some of the radium from the US through the Department of Energy. So those are all areas that we can do to ensure a more resilient supply of the necessary isotopes so that we avoid crises like the Molly-99 situation.
Awesome. Thanks, Joseph. So this is a very specific question from the audience, so I'm not sure, so please, if you know the answer, please feel free to step up. What are the quality or code requirements for manufacturers? And then the question goes on to say, is it N286, N285, or 10CFR50? I'm not sure if anyone knows the answer to that, or if not, we can certainly circle back on that answer with the audience member who asked it.
I can speak to this, just maybe not as specific to the specific code, because it's going to go down a very deep rabbit hole very quickly. But this kind of, the whole issue of quality assurance and the same situation that I had mentioned before about there's a broad brush application of quality assurance requirements as well as licensing requirements to the isotope production industry, and there seems to be an overlap or at least a confusion of which codes are applicable with the nuclear power production industry. And oftentimes we find that customers are confused, just as per this question here online, as to which aspects of these codes are applicable. And the truth is, they are applicable, but there are specific sections of these qualifications or licensing requirements are applicable. But unfortunately, because we apply such a broad brush approach with it, a lot of times we end up spending a lot of time and wasting a lot of money trying to go. So maybe one thing that could also be a takeaway here is for a review of these codes and perhaps a development of a specific set of requirements that is specialized just to production, and to distinguish that from the some of the considerations for nuclear power generation. So that would also help address perhaps some of the gaps that we're seeing. Yeah, TFR part, yep, 11.1, yep. Those are all applicable at the GMP end of things, but even for the raw radio grade production of isotopes, all the nuclear codes do seem to apply.
Yeah, so I think what that really I think that what that really speaks to is is the licensing challenges, and that's actually leads me to our next question, which is the concern identified on licensing challenges related to the drug products themselves, the facilities, or both?
I would say both.
Definitely
maybe
both.
Just a quick, definitely both. Excellent, I like that. A nice little quick short answer. So we're actually coming pretty close to time, and there's always one question I really like to conclude these sessions with, and that's focusing on the policy landscape. So the CNIC, as I mentioned, is here to advocate, educate, and really push the industry forward when it comes to awareness of the activities that we do. That's why we hold events like this. So I always like to give our expert panelists a kind of 1 to 2 minute quick policy plea appeal, if you could. So if from thinking about it from a policy landscape, regulatory landscape, how can we ensure that our industry remains diverse and competitive? What do we need to have happen here in Canada to ensure that this sector, one that we've led for decades, continues to thrive? So I'll go to Mark first, and then we'll go from there.
Sure, and I'm gonna maybe answer this a little bit more from the end use perspective rather than the supply side. But and I'll give you our own example. I think I think we need to look at regulations that govern clinical trials and find a way to get product do investigator-led studies more here domestically rather than abroad. I'll give you an example for us. We're of course going after the biggest market in the U.S., which is the U.S. We've had to do done some first in human studies, and we've actually done them in New Zealand. We've actually treated 6 patients now. So far, all of them are doing well. But wouldn't it have been nice to be able to pick a Canadian center and somehow worked with Health Canada and the interventional radiologists at the hospitals to say, okay, you know what, we want to do a small study, very controlled, demonstrate safety for the patient, and then be able to start showcasing our technology right at home instead of having to send it off, to the other side of the planet to get some of these studies done. So trying to find a way to make the regulatory barriers a little less on the clinical trial side, or the actual clinical use would be great. Well, of course, without compromising, risk to patients. To me, that would be a tack, so that we can really go right from supply right through to end application of our products.
Great answer, Mark. Joseph, I'll go to you next, and Gadir, we'll go to you last.
Well, I think I've already made my plea, and that really is to streamline and simplify a lot of the licensing aspects when it comes to the development of manufacturing and facilities here. And to follow up with that, I think if there could be encouragement of partnerships and investments in partnerships between isotope R&D institutes as well as the industrial entities that will ultimately help support the scaling up of the production of those isotopes, and that early engagement between the two would really help drive and accelerate Canada's ability to fulfill the and isotope superpower.
And Gadir, last point to you.
Thanks, Andrew. So as we all remember from last year, we had an isotope motion that was passed unanimously in the Ontario legislature. That was a great milestone for us to achieve because it really cemented Ontario's position as not only a Canadian, but also a global leader in medical isotope supplier. So I think I would encourage Canadian policy makers to start to adopt this type of approach to other provinces, and hopefully also at the federal level, because we really need to, as I mentioned, and all of the panelists mentioned, to continue to solidify our positions as leaders in this field, but not only to build redundancy and diversification so that we can avoid shortages and supply chain issues that we've all experienced last year, and it seems like they continue to come at us, but to avoid them to come, also build new capacities across Canada, because we're very capable. We just need to attract more government funding, more investment funding into building new capacities so that at the end of the day, Canadian patients will have access to innovative radiopharmaceutical drugs, and also we could go all across the globe with our innovations. So that's my take on this last point. I know, Andrew, you're a great advocate for this, so I concur with all your approaches, and hopefully we'll try to bring your voice to the rest of Canada.
Yeah, and thank you, Gadir, for bringing up the point about the motion that we had passed last year in the legislature. We wanted to give a special shout out to MPP at the time, Bill Walker, who really helped push that through. That was passed unanimously at Queen's Park in support of our industry. I think it's paramount for motions like that really speak to the economic value as well as the domestic supply chain that we have in these isotopes. So, Gadir, thank you for that reminder. And the CNIC, by way of advocacy, continues to push for similar motions passed in other provinces to Again, the supply chain of medical isotopes is really Canada-wide. It's in every province, and it's really a national pillar that we can stand on. So I wanted to thank everyone for joining us for this event. Look forward to seeing you all again in 2023 when it comes to the next cycle of CNIC events. We hold these webinars because we think it's important that people understand the value of medical isotopes, understand the work that these Canadian companies, how innovative and how truly life-changing it is when it comes to patient treatment with some of these innovative medical isotopes. I wanted to thank our speakers today, Bruno, Mark, Kadir, and Joseph. Thank you for your expertise and your presentations. I know I am not an expert in this field, so I'm always humbly reminded by how important it is to have experts like you guys speak to what's going on in the industry. And the CNIC is proud to be a voice of these companies that you've seen here today. And we will continue to advocate on your behalf and continue to educate the broader public about the importance of medical isotopes. So we're at time. I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. Please feel free to reach out to the CNIC by visiting our website at canadianisotopes.ca, and look forward to seeing you all in 2023.